Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. That Monday Night Football game really throwing me off. And I watch Monday Night Football every week, but because it's the Broncos, my week is all messed up. It's Wednesday, which means we're close to the weekend, so that's good news. Appreciate you joining me, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use at all times, is brought to you by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. And I do have a veritable cornucopia of sports topics to share with you today, and I would love to get your thoughts. The number to call or text is 719-247-1313. And because this is a short week, we're moving to our look ahead maybe faster than we normally would. Although after yesterday, is there that much more to dissect and discuss when it comes to the win over Cincinnati? So let's talk about Sunday's game. Even with the Broncos delivering that beatdown to the Cincinnati Bengals, all is not forgotten from the previous weeks. Not only because they had some of the same issues that they had in weeks 1 through 3, but because that was a win that they were supposed to get. Nobody was looking at that game and saying that this is a win that could change hearts and minds. As impressive as it was, and it was impressive, I don't know that makes you feel any differently about the Denver Broncos. But beating the Super Bowl champions, which no one has done yet this season, that's the kind of win that can change hearts and minds. But in order to beat the unbeaten, the Denver Broncos may have to stop what is nearly unstoppable. Of course, I am talking about the Tush push. To turn a phrase from one of the greatest investigative journalists of our time, Brian Fantana, 81% of the time, it works every time. 81% of the time, the Eagles convert a first down on the Tush push. And when it's 4th and 1, it very nearly works every time. It's 97%. Sean Payton, he could have done something about this. He could have helped rid the football world of this plague, this scourge that is the Tush push. Because he votes on these things. And he voted this offseason, and he voted to keep the play. Here's why.
The reason I stood up in favor of is pretty simple. If the powers to be don't want it for aesthetic reasons or competitive reasons, or it's hard to officiate, etc. But I've been involved in those meetings for a long time, and when all of a sudden health and safety was pulled into that, which might be the safest play in football, my bullshit nose kind of went up.
Most people would say meter nose for BS. That's a vivid picture that Sean Payton is painting there. But credit to him, and I've been of this mind too, don't make up something that doesn't exist. Why they didn't go to the referees first and say, what do you guys think about this, is beyond me. To try and manufacture a health reason to ban the Tush push Like, that was just as dumb, and nobody should go along with it. So credit to Sean Payton for saying, if this is the reason you're going to try and ban it, I'm not going to support that. But now the situation is this team that has been the fourth best defense on third down in the National Football League this year and has yet to give up a first down on fourth down to an opponent this year. They're going to put those things on the line against the tush push. DJ Jones, one of the guys that's going to be tasked with stopping that play, has an interesting way of looking at it.
First and foremost, don't get in a short yardage situation. That's with any team. And then if it arises, man, just and let's try our best to stop.
What's the best way to not get in a car accident? Don't get in a car. But that's not practical, is it? It's not practical. The Broncos will not be able to keep the Eagles out of a short yardage situation all game long. Those kind of situations are inevitable even when you're one of the best defenses in the league. They're just going to happen. But I think DJ Jones has the right mindset, because this is another aspect of the tush push that I just don't get. Like, how much of a percentage of the total plays in a game, and I'm not just talking when the Eagles are on offense, the total plays in the game where a game can be decided, how many of them are the tush push? I really do feel like this is making a mountain out of a molehill. This is taking a very small part of the Eagles and taking a small part of a football game and making it the be-all, end-all. It's really not. There aren't many occasions where the tush push decides the football game. So I think that the Broncos' energy, to DJ Jones's point, is in every other situation. And if it happens, and if they get lined up in that formation, then we'll see. We'll see if the Denver Broncos have what it takes to stop this play. But you got to be worried about every other running situation for this football team, which with the Eagles, it's pretty much every down and distance you can imagine. This is who they are. They run the football. But therein lies one of the more fascinating aspects of this game on Sunday. For all the talk about how unstoppable the Eagles are running the football, they've been quite stoppable this season. Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley, they're still going to run the ball. They've run the ball a lot, but Hurts is well behind the likes of Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields in terms of his productivity. I think he's like 4.5 yards a carry, where Lamar and Justin Fields are over 7. And then Saquon Barkley, coming off of that masterful season, averaging 3 yards a carry. So the Eagles aren't running the football as effectively as you would expect if you didn't really watch what was going on with the Eagles and you saw they were 4-0 and you'd be like, oh, they're just running all over teams. Really not. And there's an easy explanation as to why this is occurring. Everybody's loaded up to stop the run. We're talking about regular season Justin Fields or Jalen Hurts. We're talking about regular season Jalen Hurts. Almost did it again. The forward pass is not a concern with regular season Jalen Hurts. The legs of Jalen Hurts, the legs of Saquon Barkley, even more so, are a far bigger concern. And what teams have done through the first month of the season is load up the box. In fact, a third of the plays that the Eagles have ran on offense this season have been against boxes with 8 or more defenders in it. A third. That is an extremely high percentage. When you take into account how many plays there are in a game, how many situations are not obvious running situations, teams are like, we don't care if it's an obvious running situation or not. That's what we want to stop. And we'll take our chances with Jalen Hurts' right arm. And I would expect the Denver Broncos to follow suit. I don't think they have new ideas, and I don't think that they should feel like they need to reinvent the wheel here. The Eagles have played in a lot of close games so far this season. So you can argue that the tactic has worked. Load up the box, try and stop the run, and take your chances with Jalen Hurts throwing the football. And with the Denver Broncos, with the fact that, that puts you in man coverage, right? When you load up the box, you don't have extra numbers to commit. You're going to have to go man-to-man coverage. Broncos don't have a problem with that. They got the best corner in the game. They have the utmost confidence in their secondary. I think they would have liked to do what I imagine we'll see them do against the Philadelphia Eagles, against the Indianapolis Colts. Problem was Daniel Jones was kind of slinging it. They couldn't load up the box. And because they couldn't, you saw what Jonathan Taylor did to them in week 2. It's a little bit different this week. Jalen Hurts, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it is the year 2025. Jalen Hurts is no Daniel Jones. So the threat of the aerial assault of the Eagles just isn't there. But to me, this is a must for the Denver Broncos. If we're going to go down the road of how the Broncos win, this is a non-negotiable. They must stop the running attack of the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Broncos have had their issues, even with this elite defense, with stopping good running backs. Who knows how productive the Chargers' rushing attack would have been had Najee Harris not gotten hurt. And Amarion Hampton did pretty well. Go back to Jonathan Taylor in week 2, Jonathan Taylor last year. Broncos have had their struggles with the run. When we talk about the Broncos and what makes this defense elite, it's when they go up against teams that are throwing the football. Eagles are not that team. So if the Broncos want any chance of having a shot at beating the Philadelphia Eagles, they must keep Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley at these levels that they're playing at right now. Even at the expense of what they do best, which is rush the passer. Because if they can stop the run, now you're forcing the Eagles to throw and you're playing right into the Broncos' hands. Conversely, they run the ball. They're never going to stop running the ball. And it may be a very quiet afternoon for Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito. So there are obviously a lot of things that have to go right for the Denver Broncos to win on Sunday. This is the first one. Nothing else can reasonably happen for the Denver Broncos. Any other thing that you're looking at that the Broncos may be able to do to help beat the Philadelphia Eagles, they won't get it if they don't start here. They have to keep Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts where they're at right now. Take your thoughts at 719-247-1313. But the least of their worries on Sunday is the tush push. And it should be the least of everyone's concerns, but that's a whole nother issue here. 719-247-1313. Reminder that our Athlete of the Week nominees are up for your vote at extrasports1300.com. You could cast your vote, and the leading vote getter will join me on this fine radio program. They are Landry Roberts of the Cheyenne Mountain Volleyball Team, Jackson Mabe of the Palmer Ridge Football Team, Taylor McCann, who is currently the leading vote getter for the Discovery Canyon Softball Team, and Nathan LeDuc from the Palmer Tennis Team. Cast your vote, and we'll tabulate them late tomorrow evening. That's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. The national keyword for the 5K a day, your chance to win $1,000. It is SAVE, SAVE. Text that to 95819. You'll get a bounce back letting you know that you entered. Might as well save that number in your phone because 5 times a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, we are giving away $1,000. That's why the brightest minds in our company decided to call this 5K a day. So text save to 95819. Speaking of bright minds or lack thereof, I don't expect you to react to the news today that Bill Schmidt has stepped down as the Rockies general manager by climbing light poles or turning over parked cars, because this is an organization that has not earned that level of enthusiasm for anything they do. And every move they make, including this one, should be met with more than a healthy amount of cynicism that a new day is dawning at 20th and Blake. But there is a word in the team statement today. And the person who used that word adds to the interest. It's a word that is not often spoken around the hallways at Coors Field. And that word is outside. Quote, we are setting our sights on finding the right leader from outside our organization who can bring in a fresh perspective to the Rockies and enhance our baseball operations with a new vision, innovation, and a focus on both short and long-term success. That quote is attributed not to Dick Monfort, but to Walker Monfort, Dick's son, who is now one of the highest ranking officials in that organization. And that's important because you would never hear that from Dick Monfort, because he was someone that never even had the spine to actually fire an executive, nor did he in this case. Bill Schmidt stepped down. Dan O'Dowd fired himself. Jeff Bridich quit. Dick Monfort has had this track record of not firing executives. And it's, of all the bizarre things that he does and this organization does, that ranks up there. It is commonplace for people within organizations to get fired. And I know we should all, I guess, have more sensitivity to the idea of someone losing their jobs. And maybe it softens the blow a little bit when somebody steps down or retires or what have you. But this is sports. It's not real life. We try to compare it to real life. There are some parallels, but like these are people who, yes, they lose their jobs. They lose jobs that they love, and you get it. But the firing does not have the same impact as it would for you and I. But why Dick Monfort is so adverse to the idea, he's fired managers. He just fired Bud Black. Or was that a mutually agreed to part ways? I know he's fired managers. It's really bizarre that he won't actually fire a general manager. They have to like volunteer as tribute. And perhaps in Dick's mind, getting back to the looking outside, perhaps to him, he's gotten to a point where, hey, my son is the boss. So I'm good. Right? Because one of the biggest issues that this organization has had is that they are loyal to a fault. They promote from within. They hold on to managers and general managers for far too long when other still very rational organizations would have cut ties long ago. That's one of their biggest issues, is the loyalty that they've had. And loyalty is a virtuous trait, right? But not to bad ideas, not to people who are failing at their job. It's not virtuous to stay loyal to those people. And yet the Rockies organization has done it throughout the entirety of their existence. But the biggest problem that this organization has had, it's not loyalty, it's not payroll, it's their unwillingness to accept perspective from the outside. There are no new ideas within this organization. Bill Schmidt has been in this organization with a voice for 25 years. If he had a great idea to fix the Colorado Rockies, he would have implemented it by now. 25 years he's been with the organization. There are no new ideas here. They must look outside the organization. So this is a natural place. And as I'm saying it, you're nodding your head and you're going, well, of course they need to look outside. Yeah, but it's something that's eluded Dick Monfort for years. You and I have known this. Seemingly Dick Monfort hasn't. As much as Walker Monfort might be a product of nepotism, might he have the right idea? Might he be going to his dad and saying, like, look, we have no options left. You went from O'Dowd to Bridich, who's in the organization. You went from Bridich to Schmidt, who's in the organization. This idea that the Rockies have been hoarding the brightest minds in baseball, like, they haven't been. Trust me. Maybe the scion of Dick Monfort knows that, and maybe his dad is willing to let him look outside the organization. But this is the greatest riddle in all of sports. All of sports. There is not one other situation, one other franchise that has been as difficult to figure out than building a sustainable winner at Coors Field. They tried to lean into the thin air with the Blake Street Bombers. Then they said home runs are no good, and they put up a fence in right center field. They then tried to create a team that was more contact driven to exploit the large gaps in the outfield. They've gone speed. They've gone power. They've overspent. They've spent beyond their means with Mike Hampton and Denny Nagel and the Super Bowl pen. They've tried to draft and develop. None of it has worked for more than a moment in the history of the Rockies. But it's not just the wrong ideas. I would actually take it a step further and say, could the issue be more the person who's coming up with the answers? So I think that's why looking outside is a necessity. Because I don't think that the ideas have altogether been particularly good, but I also don't have the faith that the person making those decisions and deciding what direction they're going to go is the best man for the job. And we have to look at the success that the Rockies have had is just through the natural life cycle of professional sports. Right? Look at, Tulo and Nolan Arenado and these guys. Like, these are the type of players that you can fall backwards into just by being terrible. Right? Has there been a clear-cut direction that you can point to and say, this works? This is the way it should be done. We all have theories. They need to not only bring in somebody, a fresh set of eyes to check out the operation, but they need to headhunt here. If Dick Monfort, if this is some sort of a sign that Dick Monfort is at least taking a step back, then they should be able to attract very bright baseball minds, because the person that figures this out, this whole thing, is going to make Billy Beane look like an amateur. Because this isn't just payroll. This is environment. This is ballpark. This is culture. This is every problem that you could possibly have with an organization. The Rockies have it. In Oakland, it was, we don't have any money. Please, that's one on a laundry list of issues for the Colorado Rockies. And not that they don't have money, but they don't have the money of 3 of the 4 teams in their own division. They don't have the money that the Padres have, the Giants have, the Dodgers have, and it's not a cop-out. It's not a cop-out because, again, getting back to the acumen of the people deciding what the check is going to be written to aren't good enough. You can't tell me in a sport that just had the Milwaukee Brewers do what they did that the Colorado Rockies cannot do that. It's not about money. Do they have as much of it as everyone else? No. So they can't just blindly spend their way to a sustainable contender. But they need somebody who is really good at what they do. Not just the next person up on the organizational flow chart. And I know the question that you're asking in your head, because I asked it to myself. Does Dick Monfort know what that looks like? Does he know what a bright baseball mind looks like? I don't know. The guy hasn't looked outside the organization since 1999 for someone to lead his baseball team. Does Walker Monfort know? I have no idea. But there's a sequence of events here that have to take place in order to get to the point that the Rockies need to go, and this is the first step. We can't figure this out. Right? The first step, admitting you have a problem. We don't know what we're doing. We have to look outside the organization to find the answers. It is the natural place to go. They should have gone to it years ago. And we'll have to see. Again, every move this team makes, everything that they say, Don't believe it at face value. Right? And I'm not with this, but I'm just saying there is a word that they are using that they never use. So it grabs my attention, and it's being said by somebody who I know is the son of the guy that's made all the decisions, but he's not the guy that's made all the decisions. Sometimes the idea of the apple falling far from the tree is bad. Maybe it's not a bad thing in this case. If Walker Monfort, if that apple does fall far from the tree. One of his first things he's done is said outside. That's where the Rockies have to go. And now we actually see if they are looking outside. 719-24-7, 1313. Take your reaction. Bill Schmidt stepping down as general manager. Walker Monfort saying, we got to look outside. Multi-platinum progressive rock group Trans-Siberian Orchestra returns to Colorado Springs with its winter tour, Ghosts of Christmas Eve, for not one but two spectacular shows on November 16th at the Broadmoor World Arena. And right now, for only a limited time, you can get tickets for $55. Just go to axs.com or just stop by the Pikes Peak Center box office. But make sure you are at the Broadmoor World Arena Sunday, November 16th for Trans-Siberian Orchestra. This is your last chance to text the national keyword SAVE to 95819 to enter to win $1,000 with our 5K a day. There will be a new national keyword coming up shortly, but I wanted to get you one last chance to text SAVE to 95819. It's all part of our 5K a day. 5 times a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, giving away $1,000. To the text line, our first text of the day in is from Drewski from the 719. Always appreciate your thoughts, but Philly does have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Denver's secondary is pretty nice. Well, first of all, Drewski, I also appreciate your thoughts when you text in. I don't know what way you're arguing though on this, because it starts out and it almost seems like you're pushing back against my assertion that it would be better for the Broncos on Sunday if the Philadelphia Eagles were to throw the ball, and then you add about the secondary, which was my point, that the Broncos have confidence in their secondary, and they do have the best corner in football. But as much as I agree with, you implying that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are very good, I agree with you. One of those two guys is posting cryptic Bible verses that aren't that cryptic that everybody is taking as A.J. Brown is fed up. So I know that wide receivers are divas, but do you think that's coming from nowhere? Or do you think that some small part of A.J. Brown's behavior, whether it's the reading the book on the sideline, whether it's, putting out cryptic Bible verses, I don't know that the Bible verse is cryptic. Maybe I should put that in a different way. The Bible verse, it's a cryptic post because you're like, what are you referring to here? Do you think that there's nothing behind that A.J. Brown is manufacturing out of nowhere this frustration level with Jalen Hurts? I don't think that he is. Now, should he be doing this? No. Is he going anywhere? No. But I've seen regular season Jalen Hurts. He's not the guy that played against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, unfortunately for me. I'm sticking by it. Like the one matchup that, forget about the efficacy of Jalen Hurts throwing the football. Okay. I would be worried if I'm a Broncos fan about Devontae Smith versus Riley Moss. Yep, I'm still there. Even after Monday, because there wasn't a quarterback on the field for Cincinnati that could deliver the football in a catchable area. I like Surtain versus A.J. Brown. I think it would be advantage Eagles with Devontae Smith going up against Riley Moss. However, I do not believe in Jalen Hurts' ability, nor has he shown it through the first month of the season, that he can all of a sudden air it out on a consistent basis. That's just, it's who he is. And I've called him, he's the Jamal Murray of the National Football League. Like, who he is during the regular season versus who he is in the postseason are two almost completely different players. If the Broncos can stop the run, advantage Broncos. If they are forcing Philadelphia to throw the football, That's good news for the Denver Broncos. And even if the Eagles were a bit better at throwing the football, I think you would still go into Sunday's game and say that the main concern is stopping Jalen Hurts from running the ball and obviously stopping Saquon Barkley. But to me, that's job one. Nothing else to me is going to matter if Saquon Barkley goes crazy on Sunday, or if Jalen Hurts is able to run around. Nothing else that the Broncos need to do in order to win the football game will matter if they can't do that. Because if you look at the Eagles, they're giving off a little last year's Kansas City Chiefs vibe, where you watch and you're like, I'm not impressed by this. This is not great. But yet, at the end of the game, guess who's on top? Chiefs won all those one-score games. The Philadelphia Eagles have not put 4 quarters together all year. I don't even know if combined, probably now that it's been done week 4, 1 good quarter a game, they haven't looked great. But yet, at the end of the game, they win. And the main reason why the Eagles aren't running away from teams is literally that. They're not running away from teams. Teams are loading up the box a third of the time, and Saquon Barkley has been way off the numbers that he had last year. And Jalen Hurts hasn't been overly effective running the football. There's more volume there. There's more quantity, but the quality isn't there. So you slow down the run of the Philadelphia Eagles. You keep the game close. And then you move on to the next thing. All right. Broncos do that. They check that box. Now what do they need to do to win a close game? A game that they're going to be in. I think that shifts over to the other side of the football. And that's where I want to go in just a little bit. Another text in about the Rockies, Bill Schmidt stepping down as general manager and Walker Monfort saying the word outside in terms of where they're looking for answers to this great baseball conundrum that is Coors Field. This coming in from the 719, the Rockies need to adopt analytics. They are the most dinosaur-age team, ironically. Get it? Because Dinger. I think that's a huge reason they've never figured it out as well. Glad we may be looking outside the organization, however. But that's a very important point. Okay, step 1 is Bill Schmidt leaves. That's done. Step 2, the Rockies look outside the organization. And they say they're doing that. Step 3 is once they find a guy, they have to listen to him. Because inevitably, whoever you get is going to come in and say the same thing you just said. I need a real analytics department. And there was that story that during COVID, the analytics department was also doing laundry. And it's just such a Rockies thing. You have to, this person that they bring in from outside the organization, you have to listen to them. You can't bring them in and then immediately tie one arm behind their back. This team is so far behind, to your point, where they could be right now. And I'm not look, I'm not saying that the Rockies at any point have found a formula that I think they can sustain a winner year in and year out. I think that there are some things that they've done that I agree with more, but they haven't found the formula. But part of the reason why they haven't found it is that they don't have a robust, and it doesn't even have to be robust, more than meager analytics department. I'm not totally beholden to analytics, but I understand their value. Every organization uses them. Some more than they should, but everybody uses them, and the Rockies don't seem to. They are so far behind where they could be in solving this because they have cut corners when it comes to the R&D, if you will, of their organization. Anybody from a different organization is going to come in and they're going to say, hey, I need 3, 4, 5. I need all of this. And that's the next step in all of this, is that the Rockies have to say, okay, we're bringing in an outside perspective. The outside perspective says we're not doing enough here. So that's step 3. Or I guess step 4. Step 1, Bill Schmidt goes away. That happened today. Step 2, they look outside the organization. Walker Mumford says they will. Step 3, actually hire someone from outside the organization. Again, it's baby steps. It's hand-holding with this organization. Right? Got to make sure that they hit every step on the checklist. Step 3 is you actually bring in someone from the outside. Step 4 is you listen to what they're saying and you do it. And the analytics side of things is inevitably the first thing that person's going to bring up. I need more brain. I need more intellectual capital in this building. 719-24-7, 1313. Coming up next, why Sunday could be a meeting of 2 of the brightest minds in all of football. Welcome in hour 2 on this Wednesday. Appreciate you watching the show on a daily basis on our social media platforms, whether it be YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. You can find us at Extra Sports 1300. And while you're there, like, subscribe, drop a comment, all the fun things you can do on social media. You can also text or call into the show at 719-247-1313. Broncos, Eagles on Sunday. Interesting matchup. And I think there's no matchup more interesting in this game than the one that is going to go on but when the Broncos offense is on the field. Because then it will be a battle of wits between Sean Payton and one of the guys that preceded him in Denver, and that's Vic Fangio. Here's Sean Payton on his intellectual counterpart coming up on Sunday.
You know, you're getting someone that is going to have a real good game plan, that's going to understand your strengths and weaknesses. You're going to have to be on point with the details, and and that's one of his strengths. I mean, all the little things.
Sounds like the defensive version of Sean Payton, doesn't it? All the little things, all the details, the winning on the margins, all that kind of stuff. Vic Fangio does as a defensive coordinator. The issue with him in Denver is all the other stuff that he couldn't quite handle, and also the fact that he didn't have a quarterback. And perhaps maybe Vic Fangio a tiny bit jealous of what Sean Payton has at that position.
He's a scrambler. He's a competitor. You know, he'll throw the ball in tight places. He runs their offense really well. I think Sean's done a great job bringing him along. And they got their quarterback for the future. You know, they looked long and hard for many years, and I've got one. I mean, he's a scrambler.
Just had to drive home the point, apparently, with my edit there, that he's a scrambler. So Vic Fangio likes what he sees from Bo Nix. The end there. They've been looking for a long time. Yeah, they were looking when you were the head coach. Couldn't find one. Remember the last time that the Broncos went up against a Vic Fangio defense? You may not remember because how the Broncos fared offensively in this particular game was far less important than how they fared defensively. It was the 70-20 loss to the Miami Dolphins. That was the last time Sean Payton and the Broncos went up against a Vic Fangio defense. And if you remember in that game, 20 points, you may say, oh, that's decent. That's solid, right? Well, look closer. 2 field goals from Will Lutz, a kick return for a touchdown by Marvin Mims accounted for the vast majority of those points. No rushing touchdowns. 1 passing touchdown from Russell Wilson. Yes, as that game went on, it was a little easier for Vic Fangio to coordinate the defense when all the Broncos could do was throw the football because they were down by so many. But it was not a banner day for Sean Payton in the offense either, even before it got completely screwy. And I'm not going the revenge game route. I'm just saying it's Vic Fangio. It's a Vic Fangio defense. And as we found out with Vance Joseph here, like you can't look at a defensive coordinator based on how they were as a head coach. Look at Vance Joseph. Been pretty good defensive coordinator, wouldn't you agree? So, and I think Vic Fangio has done a great job with this Eagles defense, because this Eagles defense from a personnel standpoint is not what they've been. The attrition that comes along with being a Super Bowl champion has impacted the Philadelphia Eagles. On paper, from that personnel standpoint, they're not as talented as they were a year ago. And you may look at some of the rankings and say, man, they don't even rank that high. Trust me, this Eagles defense can still be a problem. And now you're going to have a situation. What do we talk about all the time? Well, don't have to worry about wide receiver X. And I don't mean that like XY. I mean, just insert name here, because Surtain. Bo Nix might be looking elsewhere when he throws the football, because Quinyon Mitchell might be on Courtland Sutton the vast majority of this football game. And if you take out Pat Surtain, the best corner in the NFL this year has been Quinyon Mitchell. So this newfound evenly distributed offense that the Broncos showed on Monday night, that's really going to be tested. Because whether Quinyon Mitchell lines up on Courtland Sutton all game long, and you know, because you're acutely aware of who Pat Surtain is on, it's not 100% of the time. You can't do that. There's, with all the pre-snap motion and everything like that, you can't guarantee your matchups 100% of the time. And Sean Payton is going to do, I think, everything he can to get Courtland Sutton away from Quinyon Mitchell. But therein lies the battle of wits here. But any wide receiver that Quinyon Mitchell goes up against, I'm going to take Quinyon Mitchell. Just like whether Surtain lines up on A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, I'm taking Surtain. So Vic Fangio is going to try and employ him. And if I'm game planning against the Denver Broncos, even with what they showed on Monday, I'm saying I'm going to try and take away Courtland Sutton. Let's see how Bo Nix does. Because when the chips are down and when Bo Nix is in trouble, he's looking Courtland Sutton's way 9 times out of 10. In fact, you look at the interceptions that Bo Nix has thrown in his career, the majority of them are when he's trying to force the ball into Courtland Sutton. This fact does not escape Vic Fangio. So he will find a way, whether it's just with Quinyon Mitchell on one-on-one or by bringing safety help over the top to help with Courtland Sutton. They're going to try and take him out of the game, and they're going to bring a lot of pressure from a lot of different places. Maybe the Eagles don't quite have the depth in the pass rush that they had a year ago. They still have the top-line talent. And Vic Fangio is going to employ that in a lot of different ways. He's going to try and confuse Bo Nix, and he's going to try and get him in a rush. And he's going to doing all of this while trying to keep him in the pocket. Right? All of this stuff that was true about defending Bo Nix before Monday night is true now. And the only reason why it didn't really work Monday night is because the Bengals are the Bengals. Now we get to really test it, because the Eagles do have multiple players that they can attack with, and they can slow down the run. So it goes back to what I said yesterday in reaction to what the Broncos were in that first half against the Cincinnati Bengals. You saw what Sean Payton will set out to do every single game. Right? Who's going to be targeting, the play calling, all the type of throws he's going to ask Bo Nix to make. That first half against Cincinnati was exactly how Sean Payton wants to draw it up. So now you go into a matchup with Philadelphia and Vic Fangio's defense, where Vic Fangio is going to, or the Eagles' defense by extension, is going to say, well, you don't get this. You don't get Cortland Sutton. Sorry. Or you don't get J.K. Dobbins. Or you don't get out of the pocket, Bo Nix. You have to stay in there. There will be, and it may change from drive to drive, but it's not going to look on Sunday the way it did on Monday night. The Vic Fangio will take something away regularly from this Broncos offense. And I think they'll angle to stop the run. That will be their first priority, just like it should be the Broncos' defense's first priority. But even despite what they did on Monday, it's still, hey, it's Cortland Sutton. The Eagles, I think, are going to make another receiver beat them, because they know that that's where Bo Nix is going to go. If he has his druthers, he's looking Cortland Sutton's way. I think this will be a fairly quiet afternoon for Cortland Sutton. Will Bo Nix be able to find other receivers? Will other receivers can they be relied upon? Right? As much as Bo Nix distributed the football, there were Broncos wide receivers dropped the ball 4 times. And as time goes on, it's looking more and more like perhaps the bigger issue with this Broncos team is not Bo Nix as opposed to who Bo Nix is throwing the football to. At least through 4 weeks, Bo Nix has played well. I think the guys he's throwing the football to have let him down more than he's let them down. And I think Vic Fangio is going to test that. You can't throw to Cortland Sutton. Who else are you throwing to? Can they beat us? 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Broncos Eagles. What percentage chance do you give the Denver Broncos? I don't give them a high percentage chance. I'll tell you that much. I know how the Broncos go about this. I know how they can win. But Monday night didn't alter my perspective too much about this football team. And, forget the X's and O's, forget offense versus defense. The Eagles are a team that they're just not losing. They're not beating themselves. The Broncos have routinely been a team that's put themselves in a tough position. And when it's not Cincinnati, and when it's perhaps the complete opposite end of the spectrum, those mistakes are going to cost them. So that's Sunday. On Saturday, it's rivalry, it's costumes, and it's candy at Widener Field. Be there at 5:30 for trunk or treating and the costume contest in the fan zone presented by Farmers Insurance. Then at 6, your Colorado Springs Switchbacks take on rival San Antonio in a massive, massive contest with playoff implications. Tickets are going fast. All we're guaranteed right now is this and one more home match this season. So get your tickets now, switchbacksfc.com/tickets. And that national keyword for the 5K a day, win, WIN. Text win to 95819 and you will be entered to win $1,000 with the 5K a day, something we're doing 5 times a day, Monday through Friday. Just our way of trying to help you out, saying thank you for listening. Text win to 95819 for your chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day here on Extra Sports 1300. You know what would really help out the Denver Broncos on Sunday? If, like, the Eagles were in crisis, and thankfully A.J. Brown is doing his best. He, after not speaking to the media after the Eagles game against the Bucs, which they won, he posted the Bible verse that was interpreted by every single person on planet Earth that he wanted out of Philadelphia. But he said today it wasn't directed at any particular person inside the building, of course, that being Jalen Hurts. And then he said something like this. So I'll let you decipher what it is that A.J. Brown was actually trying to get at with that social media post. So McManus, by the way, that audio is the ESPN Eagles beat writer. Okay, so we were all correct in how we interpreted it. You're frustrated because you're not getting touches. And I understand what he's getting at. Right? There is a natural place for people to go when somebody is talking about getting touches, or in basketball, getting the ball more or more playing time or all this and that. And it's, for many people, it's automatically construed as being selfish. It's like, no, if you're really into, for some guys, it might be, and it might be in and of itself selfish. Like, I don't think that's the wrong way to characterize it, but also you have to understand that these people think so highly of themselves that they believe that getting the ball to them, regardless of the sport, basketball, football, putting the ball in their hands is in the best interest of the team. They think both things can happen. Right? You get the ball to me, we're going to win. And A.J. Brown is one of the best wide receivers in football, so I don't think that he's completely off the mark when he says that. The problem is you're doing this when the team is unbeaten, when they just won a Super Bowl. When's the last time the Eagles lost a football game? You can't share these sentiments when things are going overall, or they're at least going well in the most important way, which is winning and losing. That's why, more than anything else, the timing of it. I understand it's got to be frustrating playing with Jalen Hurts. And I know you believe that the Eagles will succeed if they put the ball in your hand. I agree. But here's the thing. They're successful without putting the ball in your hand too. And it's always going to be construed as being selfish. Or it's always going to be labeled that way. I don't want to say it's going to be, it is by definition selfish. But you do think that it will ultimately benefit the team. You just can't. It's the worst look for you to do it when the team is winning. I think this is the last season of AJ Brown in Philadelphia. They're not going to trade him in the middle of the season. But I think this is because it's not the first time with him. And Super Bowl caliber rosters get really expensive. It would not surprise me at all. In fact, I believe this will be the last season AJ Brown is in Philadelphia. What they can get for him, that remains to be seen. But that's one thing that I put in the Broncos' favor here is that they're a little bit in a better spot right now in terms of how they're feeling and everyone's getting along. That's one thing that Philadelphia does not have right now. Does it become such a distraction that the Eagles, that's the reason they lose to the Broncos on Sunday? Absolutely not. But if you're the Denver Broncos, you take every little thing you can get. That's Sean Payton's whole thing, right? All these little tiny things, pre-snap penalties, special teams, all of clock management, all this kind of stuff, all little, not enough by themselves to ultimately decide a football game, but you add them all up and it makes the difference in the football game. One of those things, we all like each other. We're all getting along. And it sounds hokey and all that kind of stuff, but it does matter. Does it make the ultimate difference on Sunday? Absolutely not. But it's one little thing within the margins that the Broncos have going for them over Philadelphia. And if I'm the Broncos, I actually kind of invite Philadelphia to try and make it up to A.J. Brown. I think the Broncos would love it. Just put Pat Surtain on him and say, go ahead, throw to A.J. Brown. You should mend fences, Nick Sirianni. Call pass plays to A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts, throw the football to A.J. Brown. I think you invite that if you're the Denver Broncos. I don't think that the Eagles at 4-0 right now will be looking to deviate too much from what they have been doing. 719-24-7. 13-13. Coming up next, the Cleveland Browns have made a move at quarterback. Tell you what it is next. The Cleveland Browns are making a change at quarterback. Is this our first voluntary change at QB this season? I think it is. Every other QB change has been thrust upon those franchises with the injuries to the likes of Joe Burrow, now Lamar Jackson. And it's going to be Dylan Gabriel starting Sunday's game over in London or Dublin or Munich or Sao Paulo or I don't know where they're all going. I think it's a London game. But it will be Dylan Gabriel, not Shedeur Sanders. And I think the reason for this is because we are only heading into week 5. When I said that I believe that Shedeur Sanders would start a football game this season for the Cleveland Browns, I was envisioning much later than week 5 because I was envisioning that Joe Flacco would not be as hot garbage as he has been. I thought Joe Flacco, not that the Browns were going to win a lot of these games, but I thought he was going to guide them along. And now you're looking at the Cleveland Browns, and you're saying if Joe Flacco wasn't as bad as he's been with the way that the defense has played, what would the Browns' record be? Defense has been very good for the Cleveland Browns. Joe Flacco, no. I think Joe Flacco's done now. I think Joe Flacco can finally rest and get on with the rest of his life. I think this might be the end of Joe Flacco's career, but that's not the main story here. The main story here is Gabriel over Shedeur. I think it became it was clear going in to all of this and has been reinforced along the way that Dylan Gabriel was more ready coming out of Oregon to be playing in the NFL than Shedeur was coming out of CU. It was reinforced during the preseason that Dylan Gabriel a little bit more ready now than Shedeur. And now is week 5. So it does not surprise me that the Cleveland Browns at this point are having to go to Dylan Gabriel. And they're going to Dylan Gabriel because they're panicked. They didn't expect Joe Flacco to be as bad as he's been. I think they were looking to get Joe Flacco, I don't know, half the season and then start with the rookie quarterbacks. And it's like what I said with Jackson Dart when the Giants made that decision. What you thought about a guy at the beginning of the season should not be greatly altered in the course of 3, 4, 5 weeks. We still got a long way to go. So with the Giants, it's like if you thought Jackson Dart was going to be ready to start week 4, then why didn't you just start him week 1? And the same thing, it's a little bit different with Cleveland, but it's also very similar where you go, Dylan Gabriel was the more ready guy to step into an NFL game week 1. So week 5, he's still going to be that. This is all happening sooner than I think the Browns envisioned it. I still think Shedeur's going to start a game, at least one for the Cleveland Browns this year. This is not shutting the door. I mean, I know there is a chance it could if Dylan Gabriel plays out of his mind and the Cleveland Browns start winning football games, but I'm not going there yet. I think that the timeline being moved up a little bit for when they replace Joe Flacco actually increases the likelihood that you're going to see Shedeur Sanders at some point. Because as this Brown season, despite how good their defense has been, has gone kind of off the rails, this team has flipped into, all right, we got to see what we have because we got to make an evaluation for this upcoming draft. Do we have the answer in-house, whether it's Shedeur or whether it's Dillon Gabriel? And at every step of the way, I've scratched my head about the way that the Browns are doing this. But the Browns are legitimately, they brought them both in, which was weird. The way they have handled them is weird. They have stayed kind of true where they're giving both guys opportunities. So I think Shedeur is going to get an opportunity here. But if you decide, if you're Kevin Stefanski, to make the move week 5, Dillon Gabriel was the more ready option. But you will see Shedeur Sanders this season for the Cleveland Browns. Now, there is a video going around because this is the Sanders family experience. There's a video going around of Shedeur miming answers to questions today. And I'll say to Shedeur the same thing I said to A.J. Brown. Not great timing, but context with the Sanders is lost a lot of times. But it has been clarified by many people that Shedeur was being asked about Rex Ryan and what was said about him and why he's not ready to be QB1 and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't about the decision to start Dillon Gabriel. But it's not great timing, right? You're going to have jokes, or you're going to be in a bad... Today's not the day to have jokes. Today's not the day to be in a bad mood. Even if it has nothing to do with Dillon Gabriel starting, it's going to be construed that way. So I think Shedeur should have thought twice before he decided to go full mime. But you have to be fair. Wasn't referring to Dillon Gabriel being the starter. Now, what's the context of Dillon Gabriel saying if you're waiting for the perfect time, it's never going to come? He said that when he was asked about being named the starter. Shedeur Sanders, perfect timing, right? One of his, I don't know, catchphrases, or is that a shot at Shedeur? I think we're going in with a preconceived notion because this happened during the preseason and everyone got all up in arms about it. And then Shedeur, Dillon Gabriel, everybody was like, no, that's not what it's about. Remember the comments in the preseason? I think it had to do with the attention and celebrity and all that kind of stuff. And it was like, oh, he's taking a shot at Shedeur Sanders. Nope. And Shedeur didn't take it that way. I think we go in with this idea, right? Because there's no quarterback in the NFL more polarizing than Shedeur Sanders. And if you are a fan of his, a fanboy of his, if I may, you are going to look for any little thing to say that Shedeur Sanders is being, a shot's being taken at him or is being treated unfairly. Right? The idea that he was going to start a preseason game with no first-team reps, completely ignoring the fact that every other quarterback on the roster was hurt. The haters and the supporters of Shedeur Sanders are equally militant. I don't think Dylan Gabriel's taking a shot at Shedeur, and it has already been proven that Shedeur Sanders is not miming or refusing to answer questions about Dylan Gabriel. They were questions about what Rex Ryan said about him. On any other day, I think it's the right outlook, right? To make light of it, to ignore it, to do what Shedeur Sanders did. Not on the day where Dylan Gabriel is named the starter over you. So you ready for this starting back up again, because now the Browns quarterbacking situation is of note. It's in the news. But it will be Dylan Gabriel starting over Shedeur. This text coming in from Tom says, how do you not trade for Cousins if you're the Browns? Their defense is nasty, and Gabriel is not an NFL QB. You're right about Gabriel. Your sentiment about the Browns defense is correct. I think there are two reasons. One, when it comes to Kirk Cousins, I brought this up yesterday when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, which, by the way, Zach Taylor said he has all the faith in the world in Jake Browning. Okay. I expected you to say that. But with Kirk Cousins, he's a unique case because of the price tag. And don't forget that the Browns are having a little bit of an issue with the salary cap right now because QB1 is Deshaun Watson and has the contract that he has. So even more so for a team like the Cleveland Browns, the price tag that comes along with Kirk Cousins is a major impediment. But if we take it a step further or a step back and just say, why don't they go and get a veteran? There is a bigger picture here for the Cleveland Browns. And I think you could pick up what I'm laying down here. There is a bigger picture with the Cleveland Browns. And I think they are just fine. Well, why am I tiptoeing around it? They fully expect, even with Joe Flacco, they fully expected to be near the top of the draft. Nasty defense and all. They were expecting to be at the top of the draft. They just drafted 2 quarterbacks. They got to see what these guys can do. They're not throwing out the bigger plan here. And I'm not using the T word. This is more about realistic expectations and what is best for your franchise moving forward. Joe, not that I believe Dylan Gabriel is going to be infinitely better than Joe Flacco, but it's not like they're benching a productive quarterback in order to go with the young player. Okay, Joe Flacco was stinking up the joint. So this is not about getting worse. This is about, you could argue getting better in the short term, but definitely about getting better long term. That's what's at play here. And the Browns aren't going to deviate from that to grab somebody that the Falcons have deemed is not good enough to be their starter, or that the Giants have deemed not good enough to be their starter. They're not doing all that. With all of their cap issues and everything, they're not doing this. So there's a bigger picture. You could call it tanking if you want. I don't actually think that's what's going on here. And the fact that Joe Flacco has been so terrible, kind of protects the Browns a little bit here. Tom adds, why don't the Browns cut Watson? The Broncos ate Russ's contract. They will. They will. But here's the thing that needs to be remembered when it comes to Russell Wilson. Okay? The Broncos cut him when they did because it was more advantageous to do so. And it just happened to line up with the timing of Sean Payton is here. Because they could have cut Russell Wilson. Sean Payton, don't tell me that Sean Payton had even an inkling that Russell Wilson might be his guy. He knew what he was taking over. He watched Russell Wilson the previous year. Now, he made excuses for him. He took shots at Nathaniel Hackett, but deep down, Sean Payton knew that if he had his druthers, Russell Wilson was not going to be his quarterback. And the reason was because Russell Wilson takes way too many sacks. So the Broncos actually waited for the right moment, and it just so happened that it made it look like the minute they were done with him, they cut him. The decisive action. It just lined up with where the dead cap hit would not be as bad as it could be. With the Browns, that day is coming. It's not right now. They will do this. They will cut Deshaun Watson. But it would have been incredibly crippling. And I still don't think they would have been able to free up enough money to pick up as much of the tab on Kirk Cousins, if we're using him as an example, that Atlanta would want them to. Broncos waited for the best moment in terms of the dead cap that they could, and the Browns are doing the same thing with Deshaun Watson. This from the 951. If you think Gabriel is not an NFL caliber quarterback, then you can't say that Shador or that Sanders is either. Sanders takes twice as long to get rid of the ball than Gabriel does, and he doesn't see the field as well. I would push back against that second part. And Dylan Gabriel getting rid of the ball faster, I agree with. And it's one of Shador's flaws. Maybe his biggest flaw is that he hangs on to the ball too long, tries to make too much stuff happen. I agree with you there. But because Dylan Gabriel gets rid of the football faster, does that mean he sees the field better? Or does that mean they're opening up the first thing that opens up, he's going to throw it to? Does that necessarily show better field vision? Because you throw it to your first read? I don't think that it necessarily does. So I think with Shador, there are other things that he has, his athleticism, his playmaking ability. I think that those things make him more projectable as an NFL starting quarterback than Dylan Gabriel. They're very different. You would agree with that they're very different quarterbacks. I think the good that is in Shador's game gives him a better chance long-term to be an NFL quarterback than Dylan Gabriel. But Dylan Gabriel is more ready because of the circumstances he came from to start on week 5 than Shador is. I still think that Shador has a better chance long-term to be an NFL quarterback than Dylan Gabriel is. I'll stick with it. This is about readiness 5 weeks into the season. And I can buy that Dylan Gabriel is more ready right now. Tom says, who said Sanders is NFL QB today? No, I think what the texture is intimating is Dylan Gabriel is above Shedeur Sanders on the depth chart. And then also his reasoning for why he thinks Dylan Gabriel's more of an NFL quarterback. I don't think either one right now is definitely an NFL quarterback. All of us are projecting, whether you like Gabriel, whether you like Shedeur, or both of them, we're all projecting. I think the traits that Shedeur has give him a better chance long-term to carve out a career in the NFL than with Dylan Gabriel. But right now, Dylan Gabriel is indeed the more ready quarterback to step onto an NFL field for the Cleveland Browns. But we're going to see both. Now that Dylan Gabriel's the starter, we're going to see both. I thought if Joe Flacco lasted long enough, Dylan Gabriel would be jumped in the pecking order and it would be Shedeur. But it's week 5. It's early. And they're pulling the ripcord. Not surprised they're going with Dylan Gabriel. By the way, you can hear that game with the Browns Sunday against the Vikings right here on Extra Sports 1300. Coming up next, it'll be the 3 stories that are driving the show. Hello there. Hour 3 on this Wednesday. Appreciate you watching, listening, interacting with this show on a daily basis. 719-247-1313 is the number if you'd like to interact, or if you're watching the show on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, you can comment on any one of those platforms. Get to those in a little bit. Right now, let's spark some conversation with the 3 stories that are driving the show. All right, let's start with Sean Payton and his BS nose.
The reason I stood up in favor of is pretty simple. If the powers to be don't want it for aesthetic reasons or competitive reasons, or it's hard to officiate, etc. But I've been involved in those meetings for a long time, and when all of a sudden health and safety was pulled into that, which might be the safest play in football, my bullshit nose kind of went up.
Sean Payton, not a fan of banning the tush push for made-up reasons, and for that I salute him, because nobody should take the NFL's fake way out of the tush push. And that is the topic du jour, because Broncos are playing the Eagles. So why wouldn't it be? But to me, as it is in every game Philadelphia plays, it's not the most important thing. It's not one of the top 5 most important things, but we fixate on it. There's a joke in there about fixation and tush push and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not going to make that joke. I am going to say that I would be far more concerned if I am the Denver Broncos about all the other times the Philadelphia Eagles run the football. That's what I'm more worried about. And therein lies one of the more intriguing aspects of this game. Because I think right now you are getting 2 teams that aren't quite what people expected. Certainly the Denver Broncos have failed to impress, and even starting 4-0, there are some things about the Philadelphia Eagles which are not what you expected, like Saquon Barkley running the ball for 3 yards a carry. The rushing attack of the Philadelphia Eagles does not look like it was expected to. The most important thing that the Broncos can do on Sunday, if they want any hope of winning this football game, is keeping it that way. The Eagles have faced, and Saquon Barkley has faced, a box with 8 or more defenders in it a third of the snaps this year. Broncos should follow suit. Because if they hold down Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts' legs, then you are forcing the Eagles to do the thing that we definitely expected them to not be good at, because they haven't been good at this for a couple of years now during the regular season, and that's throwing the football. If I'm the Broncos, I take my chances with Jalen Hurts throwing the football. Not only because he is wildly inconsistent doing it during the regular season, not just because his number one target in the pass game is having an existential crisis right now, but it's also because that plays into the strength of the Broncos defense. Jalen Hurts throws it. Now Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper get a run after him. Pat Surtain gets to be lurking in the secondary. The Broncos would love for the Eagles to throw the football. But the only way they're going to do that because Nick Sirianni would just as soon run the football the entirety of the game. Broncos got to stop the run. Broncos got to keep Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts where the previous teams against the Eagles this year have kept them, which is not running at an impressive clip. Anything else you want to point out for the Denver Broncos on how they win, whether it's Bo Nix or the offensive running game or Cortland Sutton or special teams, none of that stuff matters if the Broncos, or let me phrase it this way, if the Eagles' run game gets right against the Denver Broncos. Eagles run the football, then the Broncos can't do what they do best, and they have no chance of winning on Sunday. The little chance they do have, it has to be through them keeping Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts held down in the run game. And that's easier said than done. Broncos have had their issues with very good running backs. Look at Jonathan Taylor. Look at the way the Chargers have moved the football against them on the ground the last 2 years. It's not a foregone conclusion that the Broncos will be able to hold down Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, but they must if they want any chance of winning on Sunday. And when I talk about holding them down, I'm not talking about on 4th and short and 3rd and short. That's just going to happen, which is fine. Worry about 1st and 10, 2nd and 5. Those are the situations that will occur more often than a tush-push situation, and those will go a longer way to deciding Sunday's game than those 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s that the Eagles get into that unstoppable formation time and time again. Story number 2 today. Not going to call it hope because I understand that the Rockies organization has earned nothing, and everything is I'll believe it when I see it. But something did strike me today in the Rockies statement after Bill Schmidt stepped down as the general manager of the Colorado Rockies. The word outside was used as it pertains to where the Rockies are going to be looking for their next lead executive. And that is a word that has not been in the Rockies' vocabulary. It's draft and develop on the field, and it's also draft and develop within the organization. The Colorado Rockies have not looked outside of their organization for a general manager since the year 1999. It was Dan O'Dowd for 15 years. Jeff Bridich took over for him. Bill Schmidt took over for Bridich. 1999. And that has been the biggest issue for the Colorado Rockies, is their unwillingness to look outside the organization to bring in the help that they so desperately need. And the fact that they're using that word is interesting. And the fact that it's being uttered not by Dick Monfort, but by his son Walker. It was Walker Monfort that said they will be looking outside the organization. You got to follow along every step of the way. You got to make sure that the Rockies hit every box on the checklist here. But this is something that we have not seen or heard from the Colorado Rockies in a very long time, which is looking outside the organization for help, but also someone not named Dick Monfort being the one with the statements. Next step, let's actually see the Rockies go outside the organization. And I'll throw this one in too. because I saw the Gazette today throw out a couple of names for this. 2 of them I dismissed out of hand. Not because they're not good baseball people, but because they have Rockies on their LinkedIn profile. When I want an outsider, I want somebody that has never been a part of this organization. And it shouldn't be that hard because there are not a lot of Rockies guys that have been hired to other positions elsewhere. There are few. I don't want those guys. Okay. And I know they understand. Nobody understands what happens with baseball at 5,280 feet. Nobody understands. So don't tell me that somebody who has been with the organization has good ideas. If they had them, they would have shared them when they were here. I don't want Rockies anywhere on their resume. I want complete, fresh set of eyes. I want somebody from a smart organization to come in and look at this thing. Because some of the ways, whether it's the Blake Street Bombers, whether it's Mike Hampton and Denny Nagel, where it's draft and develop, all these different Super Bullpen, all these things that the Rockies have done over the years, the guys who are outside of the organization right now, hired by other organizations, they co-signed one of these things that hasn't worked. So sorry, to me, I want somebody that has never been a part of the Rockies organization. That's not going to understand how they do things. No, I want somebody to come into the Rockies organization and say, this is how I want things to be done. Because I came from an organization that is infinitely better than yours. That's what I want. No Rockies. Completely outside. That's the ideal candidate for this team. And we'll see when they do start the search, whether they are truly looking outside. But that caught my attention. Let's go to story number 3 and a stroll down memory lane from the year 2019.
Here comes McKinnon. Down the right wing, has Johnson down the slot. Aaron Johnson with the jump. He scores! The Condor! He soars again! The Avs have won in overtime 3-2. They're going to the Stanley Cup playoffs and they finish it off in style.
Mark Mosier on the call for Altitude, April 4th, 2019. One of the biggest goals that Erik Johnson would ever score in an Avs sweater. That was their first playoff appearance in 4 years, and we know what has happened since. And Erik Johnson, who is a big part of the Avs building towards being a playoff team and helped put them in the playoffs and then helped them win a Stanley Cup just a few years ago, has called it a career after 17 NHL seasons. When the Avs did win back in 2022, the person that you were most happy for was Gabriel Landeskog, right? The second guy was Erik Johnson. Erik Johnson did not have quite the impact that Gabriel Landeskog did. He doesn't have the standing of Gabriel Landeskog. I understand that Gabriel Landeskog was the first name on the list of people that you were happy won a Stanley Cup, but Erik Johnson was second. He was a part of the dark days as well. And to see him be able to lift that Stanley Cup was almost as rewarding as seeing Gabriel Landeskog do it. And Erik Johnson was kind of the first change of scenery guy that the Avs got in order to build up this roster. They have done a lot of that, right? Top draft pick, did not hit in the other place. They bring him in and they get something from him. And of course, he was the number 1 overall pick in 2006. And even in Eric Johnson's statement to the St. Louis Blues, Buffalo Sabres, Philadelphia Flyers, and most of all, the Colorado Avalanche, thank you for the opportunities and memories, especially the 2022 Stanley Cup. Eric Johnson's one of those guys, and we have these conversations. He's an Av. That's what he will be known for. I don't think that he gets his number retired. I don't think he's a Hall of Fame player, but he's one of those guys that meant a lot to the organization, was key in the building of the organization back up. And after 17 seasons, Eric Johnson has called it a career. Says, hockey has been my life, and I'm grateful for every second. I'm excited for what's next and will always cherish this journey. Eric Johnson, retiring at the age of 37. Still young. He had more years in him. When Eric Johnson come back for the Avs? 719-24-7-1313. Drive Time Sports continues next. How would an extra $1,000 sound? Just for whatever. Sounds pretty good, right? Or we're giving away $1,000 5 times a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday with our 5K a day. All you need to do is text the national keyword, which is right now WIN, WIN fitting. Text WIN to 95819 and you'll be entered for a chance to win $1,000 with the 5K a day here on Extra Sports 1300. Rockies say they're going to look outside the organization for leadership, for guidance, for a new direction. Albert on Facebook says, sure, applications from the A's and Pirates front office will be filling the inbox. Yeah, you'll have to weed out some of those. That would not match my criteria. It's not just any outside. It's not like Ryan Howard, where he says that he would want a homeless person to be the manager of Dunder Mifflin, which is, the baseball equivalent is the A's, right? They don't have a home, right? Are they Vegas, Sacramento, Oakland, California? Who knows? Yeah, I said good organization. And I'm telling you, just the idea of figuring out Coors Field and figuring out the Rockies, I'm telling you, there are a lot of really smart baseball people in really good organizations that would love an opportunity to do it. But they're only going to do it if they don't have one arm tied behind their back. Only if the Rockies are willing to make the investment in the, I called it earlier, the R&D department, the analytics department. And I'm not saying that, excuse me, I'm not saying that analytics is necessarily, the be-all, end-all. But what analytics are is just data points. It's information. The Rockies need as much information as they can get to the fringe of information overload. But the only way you can gather that is by having a staff that is actually like a legitimate analytics department. And the Rockies haven't had that. And that's going to be kind of the next thing. Again, it's baby steps with this organization. They need some hand-holding. First, Bill Schmidt goes away. Then you say you're looking outside. Then you actually look outside. Then you look outside to an organization that is actually good at what they do, because you're going to need a very bright baseball mind. And I don't know that the creme de la creme reside in the Oakland / Sacramento / Vegas or Pittsburgh front offices. Then you actually close the deal and hire them. And then you take what is inevitably going to be their first requirement, which is to get an actual analytics staff. And after all of that, then maybe you can believe that the Rockies are in good hands. But this is the Rockies version of the Nuggets. You don't skip steps. Like, there are so many tiny steps that this team has to take. You can't assume anything with this team, because they say they're going to look outside the organization, and then they go to somebody who has used to be in the Rockies organization, which isn't different enough for me. Or they do hire somebody and they say, well, we're not going to invest in our analytics department. That's not okay either. Every step along the way is going to have to be hit. But it is a different tone in that statement today than the Rockies have had. And if you're a Rockies fan, right now, that's all you got. Right? It's just these little tiny signs that maybe brighter days are ahead. And that's what being a fan is all about, clinging to those and ignoring the overall reality of this situation. I think that's fandom. Dylan Gabriel going to start instead of Shedeur Sanders in London for the Cleveland Browns. We've been having quite the discussion on that. Tom adds to it by saying, I know Gabriel is not an NFL QB. Not sure about Shedeur. We agree, Kaufman. Maybe I'm getting sick. That's rude of you. To agree with me means that you have some ailment. That is, and look, Tom, rest easy knowing that it's only Wednesday. I'm sure I will say something that you will vehemently disagree with. So don't worry about that. I will give you more ammunition, but I think that's kind of where I'm at. I think I probably, we can already disagree because I think I have a greater belief in Shedeur than you do. But at a lower level, we agree. Dylan Gabriel, definitely no. Shedeur, maybe? Question mark. And we'll find out together. He's going to play. He's going to play. And them going from Flacco to Gabriel this quickly just further fortifies the fact that, or emboldens me in the belief that we will see Shedeur Sanders start an NFL game this year. But now the evaluation is on. And by the way, for Cleveland, this is important for them to really evaluate these guys. I don't think it was the plan to bail on Flacco, to go away from Flacco this early. But if you look at what's going on in college football this year, and this always happens, right? Is Arch Manning the guy that you thought he was going to be? Is Drew Aller the guy you thought he was going to be? Whatever happened to Garrett Nussmeier? Like all of a sudden, this crop, and that was the whole thing during the draft, right? Well, these teams aren't going in with Shedeur because next year's going to be way better. Trust me. Fast forward, we're how many weeks into the college football season? Who's the darling of NFL scouts right now? I've only heard them bailing on guys. Arch Manning, everyone's out on that dude. Drew Aller, another top of, could Dante Moore, the quarterback of Oregon, could he be the new hot commodity? ESPN put this out, and they're ranking the power 4 quarterbacks. This does not necessarily mean that they are the most NFL ready or they will be the first quarterbacks off the board, but here's where we've landed. When it comes to the state of quarterbacking in college football, this, according to ESPN, number 1, Jaden Maiava, the quarterback at USC, is the best quarterback in college football, according to ESPN. He was not somebody that was in a conversation about being the top pick in next year's NFL draft. Diego Pavia. You think you have jokes with Bo Nix's age? Wait till Diego Pavia is drafted. That dude's old enough to be Bo Nix's dad, I think. He's playing his 10th year of college football, I believe. Trinidad Chambly for Ole Miss. Another one of Lane Kiffin's guys. So far, One game in for Jackson Dart, he's the best rookie quarterback we got in the NFL. Fernando Mendoza for Indiana. I liked him better when he was with Cal. And there's Dante Moore at number 5, the Oregon quarterback who just beat James Franklin, Drew Aller, and the Penn State Nittany Lions. And then you just go on down the list. CJ Carr's number 7. CJ Carr's not eligible for the NFL draft. Julian Sayin, another one not eligible for the NFL draft. He's 11th. I'm still scrolling 15, 16, 17, 18 to get to Carson Beck, who at one point was a decent NFL prospect. And then I go to 23, 24, 25. You know this guy, Dylan Raiola. You're looking for the next Patrick Mahomes. That's your guy, Dylan Raiola of Nebraska. He'll cosplay as Patrick Mahomes, which is more than most NFL teams have when it comes to the closest thing to Patrick Mahomes. Caden Salter ranks above Arch Manning. That's how far the supposed generational prospect Arch Manning has fallen. Caden Salter is ranked above him. That is a precipitous fall. Did I miss? I had to have missed Drew Aller. Drew Aller cannot be in the 40s. I must have just skimmed over him on this list. There's a 7th. Drew Aller's got to be one of the. No. Where is he? 55, producer Ray is telling me. Drew Aller, 55. Arch Manning, 41. Yeah, the Cleveland Browns need to see what they have in Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. Tomorrow night, week 5 begins with San Francisco and LA. And if you're looking for a place to watch the game, might I suggest Cleats Bar and Grill. They are your football headquarters. And check out their Thursday special, 10 wings and a 60-ounce pitcher of domestic draft for just $20. Or if you are highfalutin, craft draft for $25. And watch the game on any one of their 19 screens. That's Cleats, 6624 Delmonico Drive. And I'm kidding about the highfalutin thing because that would probably be my choice. So another one of these supposed members of the greatest free agency class in the history of the NHL is off the board as Kirill Kaprizov signed a massive deal with the Minnesota Wild. He's going to make $17 million a year. $17 million. Mikko Rantanen asked for 14 and the market told him to kick rocks. Kirill Kaprizov just signed for $17 million a year. Good luck with that, Minnesota. It is a salary cap sport last time I checked. But I knew this was going to happen. We do this in every sport. That I would say the NBA is the worst. NBA is the worst one where we say, oh my gosh, look at what's coming up. I remember a season where it was believed that Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, LeBron James, Chris, like everybody in the NBA was going to be a free agent. Everybody was going to change teams. I do remember there was one offseason that was quite eventful in free agency, but it was involving LeBron a couple of times. But these free agent classes are never as loaded as we think they're going to be. Which is fine because if it's only Connor McDavid, that's enough. If Connor McDavid is the only free agent in the NHL, which he won't be, but the only notable free agent, that would still be an amazing free agency period. But you're going to see this one by one. These guys are going to go off the board, and we're not going to have what we thought the free agent class was going to be. And I think that the Avs are hoping that Marty Necas will be one of those guys that is not hitting free agency. And that's who I want to discuss in relationship to Kirill Kaprizov getting $17 million. Let me just get out in front of this right now. Label it a hot take if you want to. Marty Necas will not make $17 million on his next contract. He's not going to. He is not Kirill Kaprizov. Kirill Kaprizov is, even though I think that that's and what we haven't been able to figure out, and I shouldn't say good luck, Minnesota, because no one really knows what the impact of the new TV deal is going to be. We don't know what that math looks like. Bill Guerin probably knows better than I do. So I shouldn't say that maybe they have a projection that 17 million is the new 14 million. But we don't know how the new TV deal is going to inflate the salary cap. But I can tell you that that is not now the number to beat with Marty Necas. He's not going to even come close to that. Now, the number that reportedly the Avs were holding on to, whether for Mikko Rantanen, was the 12.9 that Nathan MacKinnon makes. But that was under the old salary cap. Would they be willing for let's say for visual purposes, the optics of it? Do you think that Chris McFarland is going to give Marty Necas, let's say, the $14 million that Mikko Rantanen wanted? No. No, he's not going to. And I'll tell you why. because they would have given that to Mikko Rantanen. If they just had to say, you know what, we got 1 year. We got 1 year where we got to give Mikko Rantanen $14 million, and it's going to, kind of put us in a tough spot, and then it will be okay because the salary cap is going up. No, the Avs, you can't tell me they're that short-sighted. They weren't okay with Mikko Rantanen for $14 million a year, not just for this year, but in years beyond. Marty Necas is not getting that. I would say that that's the number that the Avs are going to hold at. I think it's like $13 million at the most. They're not going to go to 14. And they're not going to even entertain the idea of going to 17. Nor should they. And nor should Marty Necas's people with a straight face ask for $17 million a year. So, yes, this is the ceiling now. But Martin Necas is not getting anywhere close to that. I still think you're looking at $12, $13 million, which is what it should be, because Mikko Rantanen is better than Martin Necas. And to me, the world hasn't changed that much to where you would be willing to give a lesser player the money that Mikko Rantanen was looking for. But does this help? I mean, it's kind of like when Nick Bonito signed his deal, right? He was not going to get TJ Watt money. He wasn't going to get Myles Garrett money. But it did maybe make things move along a little bit, right? Kaprizov, Necas, same position. Now you got this number that is out there, and you can kind of work off of that, whether it's the low end or the high end. These teams use whatever new contracts are signed to kind of hone in the math on their side. So could two things move this along and get a Martin Necas deal done? Kirill Kaprizov setting the market and the season coming up on Tuesday. Don't forget, it snuck up on all of us, didn't it? As much as we look forward to hockey season, kind of did sneak up on us. Tuesday night, the Avs opened the season in LA. I would be acutely aware of what's going on in the NHL, right, for the next few days. Because there's a decent chance that a deal with Marty Necas will get done. Not guaranteeing it, just saying there's a good chance. Because I just don't think that the Avs want to go through all this again. I don't think that they want to, have this being a question and lingering, and it gets closer to the trade deadline, and it's like, oh, well, now do they have to turn around and trade Martin Necas? I don't think the Avs want to get there. So it would take quite a bit of stubbornness from Necas to prolong this thing. And I think he's aware of all of this stuff. I think he and his representatives understand that the Avalanche are not going to want to drag this thing out. And you could say, well, they're going to use that to the advantage, right? They have an advantage. Avalanche can't afford to lose another winger. Well, that's where you understand your place in the world. You're not Mikko Rantanen. You haven't been around for a decade. You're not Mikko Rantanen, the player. You're not Kirill Kaprizov, the player. So I think there's some understanding there. And also, the Avs don't want to prolong this thing, I don't think. But also, I don't think that they're going to hang on to Martin Necas. As much as that's a doomsday scenario, I don't know that they're going to go the full season. Could you imagine them making another deadline deal in the midst of a potential Stanley Cup run to go through everything they went through last year, get another rental player in? I think Martin Necas, especially since he talked about how all that stuff about maybe he didn't like it in Colorado, he put all that to bed. I think this is just, it's very much like the Broncos extensions. And just, it takes time. And you need other people to kind of set the market to help you figure out a number. I would be on high alert for an extension for Martin Necas. And if it doesn't happen by Tuesday night, I think it could come soon after. Certainly the Avs don't want to drag this out. I don't get the vibe that Necas wants to drag it out either. But there's no reason to sign a deal right now, right? During the offseason, middle of the summer, why? The beginning of the season, that's a deadline that gets deals done. And I think maybe we're heading in that direction with the Avs' new top winger. Again, Tuesday night, Avs dropped the puck on the season in LA against the Los Angeles Kings. Let's talk about the real MVPs of testosterone replacement therapy, shall we? Synergenics, Low T Center. These guys have been changing lives for over a decade. They're the original pros in the game, and while plenty of others have jumped in, Synergenics and Low T Center continue to lead with the most medically driven, results-focused care out there. They're not just treating symptoms, they're restoring lives. Their approach is about helping you feel stronger, sharper, and more energized. If you know anybody that's been a patient at Low T Center, go and ask them. They'll tell you. Don't wait. Get into a center. Get your test. Start your journey back to feeling like yourself again. You'll be wishing you did it sooner. Visit trtmvp.com. That's trtmvp.com. Synergenics and Low T Center, the original MVPs of TRT. It has been my pleasure to serve you. Appreciate the interaction today. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.